I'm Mary Charlotte Grayson, Director of Events for the National Indian Gaming Association. Thank you so much for joining us today for our exciting and informative webcast series, Tribal Gaming and the New Normal, with co-hosts Victor Rocha and Jason Giles. Today's discussion will focus on sports betting in Indian country. Before we introduce the presenter, I would like to go over some housekeeping items to keep in mind. All audience members are on listen-only mode, which means you are muted. We will be monitoring audience engagement on the dashboard and do encourage you to participate by using the question panel. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. We are recording this webinar and you will receive an email with a copy of the recording so that you may listen and refer back to it anytime. This webinar, as well as others in our series, will also be made available on our website, indiangamingtradeshow.com, under the Education tab in the coming week. Now, without further delay, let me introduce Victor, Conference Chairman with the National Indian Gaming Association and editor of Pachanga.net, and Jason Giles, our Executive Director. Victor, take it away.
Thank you, Mary Charlotte. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Rocha. I'm the Conference Chairman for the National Indian Gaming Association, and my co-host is Jason Giles. He's the Executive Director of the National Indian Gaming Association, and this is the new normal. Good morning, everyone. In today's conversation, we're talking to our friend Jason Robbins of DraftKings about the current state of sports betting, and more specifically, how tribal gaming fits into this new phenomena of sports betting. And I say new because, you know, it's a whole different beast since the pandemic rolled out. I think, first of all, before I get into my rant, Jason, welcome. How you doing, my friend?
I'm great. Really excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
I'm sorry, not you, the other Jason. So, no, I'm just kidding. You know what, before we went on, we realized we had two Jasons, and I know we should think about this stuff. So if they start answering, if they go, you know, and to top it off, as Jason Robbins pointed out, that my hat is from Friday the 13th, and the main character was Jason, even though this has nothing to do with anything, although it is pretty funny.
And Jason, good morning, and thank you for joining us. And lots of Indian country will be logging on. But I will say, you know, we've had some heavy topics over the past 2 months. And as you can tell by Victor's and I, we're both wearing hats. I'm a big sports fan. And if Victor, ironically, is not a big sports fan, but I'm all happy and dressed down. I got my Wisconsin shirt on. Trump took credit for bringing back Big Ten football. Well, whoever gets the credit, I don't care. I'm happy that the Big Ten's playing. But thank you for joining us today. And we dressed down a little because, again, you know, fantasy sports is right up my alley and a lot of Indian country's alley. And DraftKings is ubiquitous, you know, the ads and everything. And really looking forward to hearing some great stuff this morning. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And I thought you wore the shirt for me too, because my father and my sister actually went to Wisconsin. So
oh, wow.
There you go. Lots of happy coincidences today.
Yes.
well, you know, again, Jason, you know, welcome. And like Jason said, you know, everyone is tuning in to want to hear what you have to say. And more importantly, you know, for us, you know, first of all, let's talk about the pandemic, man. You know, when this whole thing started enrolling, you know, for us in tribal gaming, you know, our casinos were starting to wind down. You know, we had a lot of concern about how this was going to affect our employees and our customers and tribal members and stuff. So it was a tough decision, but an easy decision. For you guys, it was a lot different, man. I mean, what was it like in a world without sports there for a while? I mean, how scary was that?
You know, it was really weird. We were actually in the middle of a process to go public, and everything seemed to be going well. And then, you know, about a month before we were supposed to go, all the sports started canceling, and you know, we looked at each other and said, "Of course, you know, wouldn't it be wouldn't be DraftKings if there wasn't some weird curveball thrown at us." So, you know, thankfully, it was a weird thing. The market started looking a little longer term. I think what happened was everybody kind of said, we got to throw out the next quarter's results because who knows what to make of them anyway. And they started talking about, you know, what are some of the trends that might emerge. And one of them was online and online sports betting. And, you know, in particular, because there was this notion that a lot of, states around the country might have budget gaps following some of the economic devastation, and sports betting might be something that they chose to take up. So a lot of people started getting excited about it. We were able to complete the public offering, and now we're in a great position to go out, hopefully, and grow the sports betting market. And, we're excited about doing so in partnership with people like you guys.
Yeah. Well, I noticed yesterday they were talking about the Tennessee Titans, and we're talking about the COVID-19, and actually about a month ago we have an AC Green on talking about the sports bubble and stuff like that. So we've been watching it and keeping a very close eye on it, and it's just been absolutely fascinating to watch it finally reach the potential that we've always talked about since it came out. You know what I mean? It's always been sports betting is going to do this and all that, but it was never really on the front burner like it is now. In that, did things turn out for better or for worse for you? I know for a while there, even before you had professional sports, how did you ramp up into that? I remember that we were talking about, Belarusian table tennis and, Russian, I forget, cricket even, or something like that. It was just bizarre. Jason, Giles, how did you handle it, man?
Well, as a sports fan, you just had to take it in. And I think Europe actually, maybe you can talk to this, Jason. They got out there first with the no fans at soccer matches. And
That's
I think that
Germany.
I think that sort of set the table. And I'm interested, Jason. I don't think a lot of Americans know that DraftKings is more than just fantasy football. I mean, the golf, the tennis, the soccer. How has that all been playing out? And is that does that help your company in terms of diversification and not having all of your eggs in one basket?
Well, it was, it's an interesting last several months. And at first we were just focusing on, any content out there. Victor mentioned, table tennis, and esports became a bigger focus for us. Just anything that was actually happening in the, sports world. And, whatever we could do to create fantasy contests and betting opportunities around that, just to try to keep the customer engaged and keep people thinking about us, and give them something to do when everybody was stuck at home. And as sports started coming back, as Victor mentioned, I think Bundesliga was first. It was interesting, they worked out some of the kinks, adding in the crowd noise, some of the other stuff that you see now in the television broadcasts. And I think the way it looks now with most of these sports, I mean, it's a little weird not having fans in the stands, but you kind of barely even notice. And
Right.
The exciting thing we saw was as traditional sports started coming back, with first the, NASCAR and the PGA, mixed martial arts, UFC, and then, a month and a half later, baseball, basketball, hockey. We saw people who had been playing esports and playing some of these other alternative offerings stick with those things, and it was all incremental. So it ended up, to answer your question, being in some ways, a great opportunity, because we probably wouldn't have pushed as hard on some of that alternate content had we not had that situation. And in doing so, we learned a lot about what types of other things people like, and we built some audiences for them that are sticking now, even with traditional sports coming back. So that's been a nice silver lining of it. But it was kind of just, throw anything at the wall and see what sticks for a while. And so the other nice thing is we tested a lot. We probably ran 70 to 80 different pools in the first few weeks of the sports hiatus, around everything from politics to television shows. And we got some great data on what people are interested in engaging with that'll hopefully be useful down the line.
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like when you go to the sports books in London and stuff like that, you're able to bet on the Academy Awards and stuff like that. In America, it always seems just very sports and sports only. We're staying in our lane, so it really kind of forced you to look beyond what your traditional products were. Do you find, are you bringing some back into the mainstream? And how are you going to be dealing with esports? Are you going to make that a bigger part, or how's that going to go?
Esports has been a huge story for us the last several months. The growth that we saw there it was tiny before, so it's hard to compare, but it's one of our bigger offerings now outside of the traditional sports. It's our biggest. So I think that's always been a category that everybody's been waiting to see explode. And, every year I hear somebody ask me, every day really, when is esports going to take off? And this was the time. And I think it's a great product. It's something where people can actually watch the stream alongside playing the fantasy contest. So it has a different, element than maybe some other things that they can't as easily access if you don't have traditional cable or television. But anybody that has an app can watch the stream of esports while they're playing. And there's so many different leagues, so many different games, such variety too, that I think it gives a lot of depth to the game for people. So I was pretty excited to see that. And then, some of these other things like table tennis, I think were probably a bit more of a substitute for traditional sports, but esports really feels like it had an audience that stuck. And the other thing that I would say is, I also think that with every, tough situation comes an opportunity. And so one thing that we did is early on, first and foremost, we made sure our employees were safe. Everybody had a working environment that was comfortable and all that. But once we were there, we, instead of looking at it as, geez, what's going wrong and how do we stop everything going wrong? We asked our team to focus on what opportunities will this create? What things might emerge that maybe would have taken longer, maybe wouldn't have come up at all. And so things like esports, really, that's where that came from, was people brainstorming, saying, well, maybe this is a time we can really grow esports. And I think that turned into, many different things. You mentioned the Academy Awards. That was something that we have gotten New Jersey to take betting on. So we looked at that and we said, okay, well, maybe things like politics and television shows will be interesting for people to play games. And since it's not regulated, we had all free stuff. So, it wasn't like it was paid games or anything, but we got a lot of data about where people were interested in engaging. And I think it's going to help us as we think about, what are some of the things that we'd like to hopefully get regulators to open up betting on. And my view is that if it's something that's an event, it's very different than a traditional casino game, right? It's not a game, it's an event that you're trying to make a prediction on. It's a similar audience. So, the same types of people that want to bet on sporting events also have predictions they're making about elections and other sorts of things. So it's a natural, I think, thing to let them make bets on that type of stuff and play fantasy games with those types of things as well.
I wonder if it's going to really open the eyes of the people in the casino industry to the true potential there, because it really feels for a lot of casinos that it's a square peg in a round hole, and they're trying to figure it out. They're not really sure how they're going to make money on it. But, I think this is really interesting to have this conversation. Big question is did you guys take bets on the debate last night?
We couldn't take bets because regulators don't allow that, but we did have a pool that had almost 200,000 people join. It was pretty cool. Things like, honestly, I lost track in the beginning. It was so all over the place, but there were things like, who's going to mention Dr. Anthony Fauci first? It started with the greeting. There was a question on, are they going to, they weren't supposed to do the handshake. Are they going to do it anyway? Are they going to do an elbow bump? Are they just going to walk by? So, people had a chance to engage throughout the event. And what's nice about that, and to your question on, casinos, I think that a really interesting angle here is if you can create, viewing experiences around stuff like that, and then you have games like what we're creating to keep people engaged, they'll stay throughout. And, yes, they might be watching the debate and paying attention to do their predictions hit, but they'd also be playing other games, visiting your restaurants, things like that. So I think there's a real opportunity to take these event-based things and create, in-person events around them. And obviously it's a little tougher during COVID, but hopefully when things get back to normal, big social gatherings centered around these events that we know everybody's watching. No reason why the debate party has to occur at somebody's house. It can occur at a, facility like what you guys do.
Well, it's amazing because it opens up these benign events, or normally would be benign, into actually something worth watching and entertainment. You just, granted the Academy Awards and stuff like that, but I think the new innovation and is what it's bringing. So are you seeing the age difference? Are you bringing in a new generation already? I think with sports betting, that would be already baked in, wouldn't it be?
We are. I think all of this type of content, particularly in a digital format, it really does attract a younger audience, and it gets them into this type of game and gaming, and it gets them excited. What we've seen is that when we are able to, through some of these offerings, introduce people to the product, they get into all forms of gaming, and they end up, in many cases going to casinos and playing in lotteries and all sorts of things. So I think it's great to be able to introduce a new audience that says, hey, this type of stuff is pretty fun. And maybe they would have been less likely to be, acquired or have a first experience as a customer on traditional gaming content. And something like this is what ultimately gets them to try it out.
I can see where a presidential election and Counter-Strike have a lot of similarities. You know what I mean? Stabbing in the back, attacking, lobbing grenades. So it seems like it was perfect for the betting market.
Sadly, you were right. I'm happy you first said it, but then as you were going through the list, you know what? There are.
Yeah, it just seems like it was perfect for, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, Jason, so with regards to Indian country, we've got about 245 plus tribes that are engaged in gaming right now. And for the most part, and about a little over 500 Indian gaming facilities. And for the most part, they've all been shut down for at least a short amount of time. If not, some have been shut down for an extended period of time. Navajo Nation comes to mind. And just to give you the layout, Jason, we probably know Michigan tribes are engaged in sports betting and sports gambling. And then New Mexico, there the Pueblos and Navajo Nation, through a quirk in their compact with the state,
right.
They were allowed to engage in sports betting just because it wasn't prohibited. It wasn't anything they had contemplated, but it wasn't anything that they had put real restrictions on in New Mexico. So some of the Pueblos and Navajo Nation jumped out there and just said, we're going to put a sports book in here. And the interesting thing is, Jason, they weren't necessarily looking to do the big Vegas style sports book. They were much more smaller kiosk type deal, which I imagine is more right up what DraftKings could provide. And as we open up, hopefully as we get a vaccine and start to open up next year, there might be tremendous opportunity for that kind of action in our tribal gaming facilities. Is DraftKings set up for something like that, to provide that kind of service, and where you might, instead of your gang of 10 guys going to a bar and doing their draft, they might just come to the casino and do it if they can take advantage of some of what DraftKings can provide. Where do you see that, and is DraftKings set up for that type of in casino action, especially on Indian reservations, where you might not face the amount of regulatory scrutiny that you get at the state? It might be much more like a partnership going in.
I think that's a great question. I mean, first of all, before I directly answer, I grew up around Indian gaming. I grew up in Florida. My first ever gaming experience was the old Miccosukee Casino.
Oh, wow.
Back then. I don't even know if it's fair to call that a casino. It was
that was scary back then.
Yeah. I've watched it evolve to these unbelievable properties from Florida to California to Connecticut to all over the country. And it's just remarkable to see the quality of experience, the quality of service, everything that has been created out of it. And I also know how critical it's been to the economies of tribes and how important it's been to helping provide, ways of living and means of living to people. So we have a great respect for that and a great respect for the quality of experience that tribes around the country have been able to create. In many ways, it's better than anything outside of Vegas. I think in some ways it's even better than what's in Vegas. So it's pretty remarkable to see. I think what you touched on is spot on. There is a lot that we can do. And it really is about, bringing new audiences, getting people engaged with different forms of both brick and mortar and online gaming. And I think one thing we've been able to do, we have partnerships all around the country, and including with tribes like Bay Mills in Michigan. We haven't launched there yet because they're still in the process of, getting everything off the ground in Michigan. But if you look, for example, in New Jersey, you partnered with Resorts, great, casino. It was the smallest casino though on, on the boardwalk in Atlantic City. And it's now the #1 retail sports book outside of the Meadowlands, which of course is, just outside of New York. But within Atlantic City, it's the #1 retail sports book in the state. And so, that in a property that's very small, a lot of that is driven by our customers. And if you just go there, maybe not now, but prior to COVID, you would see a very different crowd of people hanging out in the sports book than you saw previously at that facility. And, from what I've been hearing, a lot of them are spending times, or have been, prior to COVID, of course, spending time playing the table games and eating food and drinking and other things too. So I think that's a perfect example. That's a little bit different because it's a bigger sports book than what you were describing. It's, more looks like a Vegas style sports book, but it doesn't have to be. I think the idea is really to just reach our audience, create events and reasons for people to go there. We do things like where we have, famous athletes host events there, or we'll have contests where people can qualify online, but then they have to come in person and go to the casino to be able to compete in the finals and things like that. We create spectator events out of it. And there's just a lot I think we can do. And it's a very different audience in many cases. There is some overlap, but it's mostly a different audience, an incremental audience. And I think that what you touched on is exactly, the type of thing that we are excited about when we talk about partnering with tribes around the country, that, we can do. It's always nice when you can create win-wins, right? And especially when you can, do well and do good at the same time by helping out the tribal economies and growing everybody's businesses. And I think this is a perfect example of where, there's a huge opportunity, I think, to add value across multiple dimensions. And that's what a real partnership is about.
Jason, we had Chairman Brian Newland on the program about a month ago, and actually he should be listening right now. I got a nice email from him. And what was really amazing about that conversation is that, he talks about his tribe being a small tribe in upper state Michigan and having to deal with other tribes, growing and standing between them and their marketplace. And then all of a sudden with DraftKings, they've become a player in the market in Michigan. And it was really wonderful. I mean, it was wonderful to me that the fact that they had another opportunity, and the sports betting game, you know what I mean? And DraftKings is such a strong brand too, that it was phenomenal for them. And Chairman Newland was just a great guest and stuff. So from that aspect, I see, one of the things that I want you to help us understand is what's all this new, these new relationships with the sports leagues now and the medias. A couple years ago in Maryland at the MGM Harbor, when the AJ had that conference, Ted Leone sat up there and he talked about what the future of sports is going to be. And now 2 years later, man, if he wasn't right, you know what I mean? You see it laying down. But what I think what's interesting with Ted's, and Jason, I think you can talk about Jason Giles, is that the fact his plan is to put a sports book in his stadium, right? And now you're starting to see that more and more and more. Tell us more about this new era, even. You know what I mean? This new epic.
Well, Ted is a very good guy. He's a great guy. He's an investor of ours, so I've gotten to know him. And you were right; he was prescient here. He usually is, but he was all over this well before most were. And I think for that reason, he always had an aspiration to do something like that. I think that'll vary state to state. Different places will think that's a good approach, and some will say, we have plenty of retail outlets and tribal casinos or other places, and we don't need that. So that will be a different approach state to state. But the way we look at it is, we want to partner with great innovative people, whether that's Brian, as you mentioned, in Michigan, whether that's somebody like Ted, whether that's somebody like you guys. We want to partner with people that are forward thinking, that understand that, innovation is ultimately what drives growth, and that it'll be great partners that seek win-wins. And, every partnership doesn't go exactly as you think it's going to. There's always curveballs. There's always things that don't work out like you thought they would. And what makes great partnerships is when you have a relationship where you figure those things out, and then at the same time, identify new opportunities. Maybe it's not something that you initially thought about, but collaborating brings new opportunities to the table too. So those are the types of things we look for. And, depending on where and depending on, when, it'll be different sorts of partners. But really the kind of common thread are those things: innovation, great partnership, great relationships, and people who are seeking to create win-wins, not get something out of the transaction at the expense of the other side.
Well, Jason, do you still like do you still have a kiosk at the Cowboy Stadium and relationships with some NFL teams? Is that
We do have a lounge at the Cowboy Stadium.
Okay.
We don't have anything, you can bet on because sports betting is not yet legal in Texas, but we do have a lounge where people can play their fantasy games. They can watch games on TV. They can order food, things like that. So we have a few of those around the country. We have another one, for example, in New England at the Gillette Stadium with the Patriots, and I won't go through the whole list, but we have a few of the other ones around the country. And I think that's a great concept and a great example of something that we can do with teams.
And I point that out for our audience because a lot of tribal leaders and some tribal gaming regulators are on here. Just to reiterate, Jason, we're our own jurisdiction. We're sovereign governments. We're under the Constitution. We signed treaties with this nation before it was even a nation. And those treaties are still in force and effect when they ratified the Constitution. And we take those seriously. That's the United States' word to us. So a lot of those jurisdictional issues, if you go to an Indian country, they will work with you, and whatever the NCAA might limit you on doing, that's not going to, a tribal government is not going to listen to the NCAA. They're going to do what's best for the people on their reservation, the best for their jurisdiction. Yeah, a lot of people shouldn't listen to the NCAA, but
it's a very New Jersey approach, it's a very Jersey approach, what? Yeah, I heard you. You know what I mean? So yeah.
But that's the one of the things I think Indian country can bring is our regulators and our governments recognize these opportunities and will work with a company like DraftKings to set something up within the reservation.
Exactly. And, that's a big part of what I was thinking when I was talking about my childhood and my experience watching the growth of Indian gaming. It's been amazing to see how quickly the innovation and the quality has gone up relative to maybe other places. And I think that is a huge advantage you guys have in that regulatory framework.
I know, there's been a lot of announcements. Yesterday, the Chicago Bears announced that they're going to be, they signed a deal with PointsBet. It seems to me pretty evident why the leagues are going to get into sports betting. Why did it take so long? I mean, it took the pandemic to get them to move off their perch, I
think that, as you know, when you have a lot of stakeholders, this well, being in a state that has, close to 100 tribes. So when you have a lot of stakeholders, sometimes it takes time to get everybody aligned around an approach and get everybody rowing in that direction. And sometimes it takes a shock to the system, like the pandemic, to pull that, and accelerate that process. And, I think that the leagues have long recognized there's value here, but for them, given the content is built around their sport, there are a lot of important issues to consider. And I think that, protecting that aspect of it and making sure, in the same way you guys think about protecting your core business, right? And making sure that when you do this, you do it in the right way, in a way that's incremental, that doesn't create issues. I think it was the same type of thinking on the league's part, and they were thoughtful about it and they took time. And I think when, it was time for the market to start to develop, they were ready because they had put that time in. So we're very grateful that the leagues and teams are in a position where they're supportive of sports betting. It was obviously not the case, as you mentioned, for a long, long time. And I just feel excited that we're where we are today. And it's been a long journey, but I can tell you there's a lot of really smart people working there, and they get it. It's just about doing it the right way.
Well, speaking of smart people, Jason, as someone who's watched DraftKings from the beginning, you were kind enough to be one of my first keynote speakers when I was producing conferences and stuff like that. And it was actually before the first season of football. So you guys were still a potential unrealized yet, but you guys are going to shoot out of the starting gate. And I think with anybody with eyes in their heads could see where you guys were going. But you talk about the tribes, and that's a real big issue with a lot of tribes right now, is land-based versus mobile. And that's for us why it was great to have Chairman Newland on, is that we could talk about mobile and talk about the potential mobile and what it meant to those tribes, And if you look in Connecticut, that's what the tribes want over there. That's what they're talking. And in New Mexico, they're looking at, but some of the other markets are not looking at mobile right now. What would you tell those tribes? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, we are deeply respectful of the importance that the gaming industry has, the importance of it to the tribal economy. So I get that. And if I were in a position, you know, where something like that were totally what was driving the life and welfare of my community, I would be careful about it too. So we get that. I think that, you know, it's just about education and getting comfort. I deeply believe that this is an incremental opportunity. I think that there's lots of evidence to support that. For example, in New Jersey, after sports betting launched online, casino revenues, brick and mortar casino revenues went up pretty much up until the pandemic. They were still going up at a faster rate than they had in prior years. And the reason is it brought a lot of new people into the market, and there were those synergies and the types of events and in-person things that I mentioned that could be created. So I think it's the same story in Indian country, where if we do it the right way, it should add value, it should create more. And that's really what it's about. It's about creating, you know, what is already in the gaming industry extraordinarily important to the economies and lives of tribes, creating even more prosperity within that. And I think that, you know, our job is to, however long it takes, just, you know, try to continue to be transparent, provide data, and show people that this works and this is something that they should embrace and that it can actually be good for them and it's not going to harm the things that are so dear and important to their tribes and to their livelihoods. And I think the good news here is the facts are on that side, and that, you know, as time goes on and more evidence and more data gets out there and more people get educated, I think that's where we'll go. But I completely get it. And I said, if I can't even imagine what it would be like to have gone through the history that you and your tribesmen have gone through. But if I were in that position, I would be ultra careful here. I would want to make sure it was done in the right way. And, you know, I was very confident that it was going to add value to the tribe. And that's what our job is to show.
I believe in Michigan, you're going to be doing a Bay Mills branded, DraftKings branded retail space on their casino also, right?
Exactly. One of the things that we think, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, that we think is attractive in these partnerships is we can create these branded experiences on the property that then we will use as a catalyst for, or as a center point for events and you know, promotions and things that we will do to drive people to the property. And it's good for everybody. We make more money on the book and we share in that. And then there's more foot traffic to the casino. And I think if you particularly take someone like Bay Mills, where their location is a little bit more out of the way, that's a real reason to get people onto the property. And these are people that might not be going there otherwise. These are people that, you know, might just be, you know, not even aware that they have a property up in that part of the state. So I think that's a perfect example of where, you know, this type of partnership can create value for the brick and mortar business.
Yeah, yeah. You got it, Jason?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, sorry. A couple of things, Jason. Just watching the growth of your company and the early hurdles that you guys had to overcome, I think that separates you guys a little bit from your traditional brick and mortar casino groups that are out there. Just from a standpoint of, should a tribe institute mobile gaming on property? And if they have that set up on property, once either they work out an agreement with the state or they just decide our compact allows us to do this, we're going to go forward with it, federal government, you can't stop us. Does that mobile component, even if it's just limited to on reservation, which Mississippi Choctaw have right now, they're limited mobile betting on reservation, is that something that's easy to branch out and reach to the rest of the surrounding communities and the rest of the state, frankly?
Well, it's pretty easy to do. I would say from our experience, it's not, you know, it definitely adds some value because of course, if people can do mobile gaming anywhere on the property, that allows them to, you know, have some flexibility and will create incremental value. But the real value is taking those people and when they're off property, having them be able to continue to bet on sports and play fantasy and things like that. And I think having it on property is a great way to introduce people to, you don't have to do this, you know, through a kiosk or through a ticket counter. You can do this on your mobile phone. And hopefully that leads to more people saying, hey, we want to be able to do this anywhere in the state. And then that's great, because then those customers, even when they're not on the property, you're still all making money off of them. But definitely easy to do, and I think adds some value. It's just, it's scratching the surface really, because the real power of mobile is that you can do it anywhere. And I think, the incrementality comes from really tying the two things together in a big way, part of which is being able to do it on the property, but that's really scratching the surface.
And another quick thing about DraftKings, and it's something Brian Newland shared with us, when tribes want to implement this type of gaming option for their patrons, they want to do it with a partner that's going to be in it for the long haul. And certainly DraftKings looks that way. Where are you guys now with going public? Is that, do you have a timeline on that, or is it you're just going to wait out the virus? Or?
We went public 6 months ago, so we are public now.
So that's delayed, yeah.
Yeah, we weren't sure at the time if we were going to have to delay it or not, but we ended up being able to get it done, thankfully.
So that's actually a good thing, because now you're under.
I think it was like April, wasn't it? It was like right in the middle of it.
Like 5 months ago, actually. Time is getting all mixed up. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So that's part of it, and that's part of what makes a company like DraftKings more attractive to tribal partners. Now you have, some of the SEC requirements and things of that nature. It makes your due diligence a little bit easier to do, as opposed to fly-by-night folks and that type of thing, which there's a lot of. I hate to say it like that, but
hey, don't talk about the Europeans like that, Jason. Don't talk about the Europeans.
Caribbean guys.
They're still learning the language. They're still learning the language. You know what I mean? The culture.
But there is that regulatory and legal responsibility that comes when you go public. And I think it's important for tribes to know that. I lost track of it. I'm sorry, I didn't know. We were probably on CNBC and I missed it that morning. But in terms of being public, I think that actually is a good thing in doing business on Indian country, because one of the big things is every tribe and tribal regulatory authority has their own background requirements. And if you're already publicly traded, you're going to meet a lot of those just by being able to give them what's publicly available. So that's another strong point there. And as Victor's pointing out, we are tribes. When they first got in gaming, Jason, they did take the long view, and I think we're taking the long view on this one. And where do you see DraftKings, assuming we can get back to normal? If we had a normal environment, where would you be right now with a lot of this stuff? I mean, I know there's the unintended positive effects of the COVID shutdown that forced you to branch out a little, but where were you looking to take DraftKings next across the country?
Well, I think, a lot of what we're talking about today, the expansion of sports betting, both on the, brick and mortar side and mobile, is really what we see as the big future opportunity that's ahead of us. And there's a lot of states, I think, that we're looking at it beforehand. My hope and belief is there will be even more now, because I think states are more in need of revenue, given some of the budget challenges that are out there these days. So that's really the big focus for us. And I think one of the things that is different about us versus, some others in the market is we're not a casino company. We don't have casinos. We don't really have any major brick and mortar presence outside of the books that we do with partners such as, Bay Mills. And, that's something that I think allows us to focus on what we do best, which is to create really great technology-driven experiences. And those experiences can power in-person, books, like the, technology behind the kiosks or the ticket counters and things like that. The live betting, everything there, and it can power mobile. And I think that those are both big opportunities to partner together with the tribes. And, I think that's something that's going to be a big deal over the next few years in this country. And we're just excited to be a part of it. And we're excited that we have great partners that, are interested in innovating in the same way with us.
And Victor, he brings up a good point. A lot of times, if you watch the financial channels and stuff, they will describe a company as Tesla as a technology company. And I've always heard them describe DraftKings and some of these other up and comers as technology companies, not a gambling company. And I think tribal governments need to know that distinction is important, because what you're getting is the technology, and it just so happens to relate to the gambling industry in this case, but it can branch out. One thing, Jason, I'll get technical here legally real quick. The Wire Act, Indian country writ large, a lot of we feel it's an antiquated law. It desperately needs updating, if not just scrap it and start over. It's hard lobbying the federal government right now with such division, but we are looking to get better payment systems, update our payment systems, and also update that Wire Act. I really think that Wire Act is one of the biggest impediments to economic productivity in America right now. Are you guys active in lobbying the federal government on these issues, or have you testified before the different committees yet on things of that nature?
So, I think that first I agree with you. I think that it is an outdated law and should be either scrapped or updated. But, we haven't been incredibly active at the federal level. We certainly, keep our eye on things there, but we're mostly active at the state level. Thankfully, I have not been asked to testify yet.
Okay.
If I did, I would, but it's not something that, I think most people look forward to. So thankfully, I haven't been asked to do that yet. But, I think for us, really, the focus is on states, and, that could change, right? It could change at some point. But right now, it seems like the states are running with sports betting, and, hopefully that'll continue.
What's interesting is to watch the European market now coming over to the United States. Yes, the Apollo Caesars offer for William Hill the other day, I think, has really opened up a lot of people's eyes. Well, only if they haven't been paying attention, it would open their eyes. But I'm hearing a lot of complaints from the Europeans that the American market is it's overregulated, it's too diverse, restricted by regulations. They haven't even come into tribal gaming yet, and they're complaining about the American market. These guys they have no idea what they're going to run into. But you know what, a lot of it, Jason, is if you go to the European market, when I first started going to ICE and to London and stuff, I walk down London and there's a sports book on every corner, and then one in the middle of the block. And I remember thinking, well, the sky isn't falling. They can have gaming. But soon after that, you started seeing more and more stories. And now they're all like fleeing London like the snakes fled Ireland. You know what I mean? They're all just like running to the United States, and this is their big savior. And according to, if you look at William Hill, it kind of is, So, is this good for us? There's a lot of competition, but, we worry sometimes that a lot of these guys, don't take the regulation serious enough. They're used to they're used to the European model, and it's a lot different than the American model. How is that going to happen? Do you see those guys tapping it down to come into the market, or are we going to send Dennis Rodman back to North Korea?
Well, first, I think you're right. The way gaming is regulated in America is very different than anywhere else in the world. And I think it is an adjustment if you're used to being regulated in Europe or elsewhere to understanding all the nuances. And it's complex and it's hard if you're not here, because there's so many things, take tribal gaming, for example, that have so much history and context behind it, rather than it just being a straightforward, legal and government affairs topic. And I think it takes a lot of time if you're new to the market to get to know all those things, to digest it, never mind understanding, that each state is actually in many ways like a country, and each one is regulated in the same way a country would be regulated overseas. But I think, the reason that there's so much focus here is the size of the opportunity. The US is, I think, almost certainly going to be the largest sports betting market in the country in due time. It's a matter of when, not if. Just to put it in perspective, the state of California is larger GDP-wise than the entire UK. the UK, which is currently the largest mobile gaming market in the world, the largest mobile sports betting market in the world, is actually smaller than just one state in the United States. Obviously the biggest state, but still one state. So it really is going to be a huge market here. And I think they get the opportunity, but it is different. And I think some are going to be more successful than others at adapting to it. And particularly in a market as complicated from a regulatory and setup perspective as this, it's tough. But, great companies will figure it out. And the same way I think we hopefully one day will be able to figure out how to expand overseas ourselves.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Jace.
Just one more question about how DraftKings is looking down the road. One of the bigger issues in Indian gaming is our customer base skews older, and you get the millennials and the Generation Z, and I've got two 20-somethings, and they don't own a TV. And it baffles me, all these younger kids, they don't own a TV. They have no interest in owning a TV.
Take my flat screen.
Yeah, I got my phone or I got my computer. How is DraftKings, because you depend a lot on the live sports shows. If a new generation is coming up and they're not even buying TVs, how do you get where do you capture that audience? Do you have to go to every app out there, Hulu, you have to do all of that in hope of capturing that up and coming audience? Where does DraftKings see that going?
Well, you're right that it does start here with the phone. And, I think that for us, two things I'd say. First, before I answer your question, I actually think what you're touching on is where part of the opportunity on the partnership side exists. We do have a younger audience. We reach a different audience that we can help introduce to traditional brick and mortar experiences. And as I said, I want to partner with people who have high quality and get it. And we have no problem introducing our customers to great experiences of our partners. So that's something that I think is a real synergy between us and our partners in bringing more of a full gaming experience. But as far as your question on the streaming and things like that, it's an evolving thing. It's hard to know where it's going to go. I think the important thing for us is people are watching sports, whether they're watching it on television, whether they're streaming it, whether they're following it through some, visualization that's created in an app, which I think a lot of people are just doing that now. It doesn't matter as much to us. What matters to us is that people are consuming the content, they're following it, and they're interested in it. So, we would love to be helpful if we can be in whatever transitions need to occur from that type of viewing experience being on a traditional television screen to other sorts of, screens. But I think it will evolve, and it's just a matter. Sports have been around since the beginning of time. This is not like a new thing, that came about in the last 50, 100 years. I mean, people have been playing sports since probably the days of the cavemen, betting on sports too, who would throw the rock the farthest or hit the other one in the stick the hardest or in the head with the stick the hardest or something like that, right? So it's been around since the very beginning of time. Betting has been, and the format of where it's consumed has changed over the years. But the actual, core thing about us is people that we love watching competition. And if we can't participate in that competition on the field, on the court, we love being able to bet on it. That's not going to change. So we're just trying to do our best to be a part of that ecosystem and help it evolve in any way we can. And we think the fundamental underlying principles that people love sports and they want to play fantasy and bet on sports will continue to hold for as long as people are around.
Do you think sports betting is changing the experience of sports? I read a lot of op-eds. I see a lot of people talking about it. I read one the other day where the guy said, well, I don't know anything about sports betting. I feel like I'm being left out now. You see the broadcasters talking about it and stuff like that. How is that? What's that going to be like?
I think, while it's been around forever, it's becoming even more. I think you're right. I think even more it's becoming ingrained and core to the viewing experience in sports. And I look at it as it's part of a sort of larger trend around people moving from more passive content consumption experiences to more interactive ones. And that can come in any form. That can come in the form of fantasy. That can come in the form of people tweeting about the debate while they're watching it on social media. That can come in the form of people having pools and games that they set up around, the bachelor or bachelorette with their friends. There's lots of different ways that can come about, but there's a general trend there. Even people texting with their friends. No one sits there and just passively, not no one, but less and less people sit there and just passively consume things. And that's forever going to change, everything. And so I think sports betting is a big part of that. I think fantasy is a big part of that. I think it really, it touches on something that's that larger trend that people want to be active participants with the content. They want a social component to it. And they don't just want to sit there and passively consume anymore.
You really touched on probably one of the most important things that you've said in here, which is really about, it's a change of behavior of society. Instead of sitting in front of your radio, then you sat in front of your television. Now it's, everyone's in a different room with your own phone and with your iPad, and it's the way we consume now. And, it kind of goes to the root of where the sports are going and where media companies are going, because that's why they're going in full force into sports betting and media companies like Sports Illustrated and all the other ones just deal with bar stools and Penn. They were supposed to be tapping into this bro culture. They're going to have the sports betting, but it really is about behavior modification and the way we get our information, the way we get our entertainment now. And I think that's a lot of where we see the sports companies. And kind of going back to your question, Giles, which is that, the new generation isn't watching television. They aren't sitting down on television. They're watching it, clips on YouTube and clips on Instagram and stuff like that. And so that's where it's a big threat to these media companies that have all this money and billions of dollars into these games and stuff, and the licensings are up again. And these kids are like going, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to dance on TikTok. You know what I mean? But they're wearing a jersey and maybe wearing a DraftKings hat, but they're just not watching. So this really is about this transformation of society and how we're getting information. And, it's all part of this big, everything changes, right? Then that's what we're going through again. And I think it's important that we recognize this and, and kind of going back, and that's where the tribes feel a little concerned, is that, we want to make sure we're not left behind, and that, we've got the casino thing down. Now we're trying to figure out, okay, what's this new generation of gaming look like and how does it relate to us specifically?
I think that's a great point. And, it's really specific to live content too. All content that doesn't have to be consumed live, how many people still watch it at the scheduled time anymore? It's all on demand or recorded. So really everywhere across the board, the way content's being consumed is changing, and sports is the best and most prevalent form of must-watch live content. It's really not something.
He had a stroke.
Jason. Lost you there, Jason.
He pulled a Ron Paul. Well,
Victor, we're coming up close to the end.
We're coming up to the moment. He'll probably come back in, and that's fine. But you know what, Jason? That's just like, it really is about the culture of consumerism that's changing, and the way we take in the media, the way we take in sports, all that's changing. And it's really, as Jason and DraftKings have positioned themselves, and actually a lot of these sports betting companies have really positioned themselves to take advantage of this new generation of entertainment. And that's really what we're talking about, is entertainment and gambling. They're one and the same now. They're becoming the same.
And the best thing, Victor, moving forward, I see a lot of folks on attending today from Mexico and all around the country. The great thing with partnering with folks like this is you're just going to be in that position to, when this really takes off, you're already going to be built in.
Right.
Right now, I think some of the pueblos that have stuff up and running are in a fantastic position for next year or the year after, when we get back to normal, to just really take this and run with it in terms of sports gambling. And here at National Indian Gaming Association, we want to partner with folks like DraftKings and all these other gaming companies to bring our betting systems, our payment systems, our regulatory systems into the 21st century. I've said it over and over. When you go to Europe and you see the payment systems they have, I mean, it feels like the dark ages here in the United States. And we're going to have a new Congress. We'll see what happens at the presidential election. But hope springs eternal that we can get a lot of these regulatory burdens out of the way and unleash what everyone's already doing and capture that economic activity through the sports gaming and through companies like DraftKings, because they're out there. I mean, you can't watch a sporting event without a DraftKings commercial. So to the extent anyone's on the attending today and you're looking at building up a new sports book, and it doesn't even have to be a sports book, a sports kiosk, they're out there and they've got experience now working in Michigan, and I really think the future is bright once we can get past this COVID mess.
Yeah, I agree. And again, we apologize that we lost Jason, but I had to boot him. He's getting on my nerves. Yeah, but you know what? In a way, Jason, it's kind of nice to be able to recap on what we just talked about. Right. And first of all, he was absolutely brilliant and talked about the important issues, and more importantly, talking about the respect of tribal sovereignty and the respect of tribes, and that's very important. And I've known Jason over the years now for 4 or 5 years, and watching his company and all the sportsmen has been phenomenal. So you know what, we appreciate everyone to come. We want to thank Jason Robbins. We're sorry that we lost him, but next month we're going to go back to obviously our normal time and our normal days. Actually, I think next week we might be moving. No, I think, I don't know, I'll let you know. But during October, G2E is going to be in October, all these other gaming conferences and stuff like that. So, we're going to go in a little different direction in October and talk about other tribal stuff. And there's plenty of issues to talk about besides gaming, but we will be talking about casinos and stuff like that. But you know what? I want us to, there's so many issues we can talk about. So we'll be sending the word out to you. Want to thank everyone for tuning in. Jason, Giles, thank you, my brother. It was a great show. To our friend Jason Robbins. And we promise we'll bring more of the sports betting companies in to talk about the future and how it relates to tribal gaming. I'd like to get Peter Jackson from Flutter and people like that on here too. So again, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Trapped in the Guitar Center again. And we'll see you next week. Okay, bye.